Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Chris Ballas and Anthony Broom on a beautiful Thursday, June 6th, 2024. We are going to get into some Michigan basketball as they continue to at least attempt to or kick the tires on adding to their roster heading into the first year under Dusty May. We'll talk Michigan football, a little bit of schedule talk at the end of the show with some of Michigan's toughest games this fall. But before we get into it, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video if you want the Wolverines to win a natty in either football or basketball this year. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to our channel. We got a bunch of content coming not only throughout the summer, but a ton planned for the season this fall. And as always, head to the Wolverine.com. You can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. So you get past the paywall there, get all of our premium content inside the fort coming on Friday, as well as a bunch of stuff over on our message board with the discussing with a bunch of Michigan fans over there. And finally, the WolverineOnDemand.com or the link in the description is your place to get and pre-order the 160-page Michigan Football Preview magazine at a discount right now. If you're a member on the website at thewolverine.com, you get $10 off. If you pre-order before June 17th, you get free shipping. If you're not a member and you still want to pre-order before June 17th, Will Johnson's on the cover. You got feature story on him, exclusive interviews, features on other players, Q&A with Wink Martindale, which Chris was on the phone with him earlier today, so you're not going to want to miss that. Opponent previews, year in review, Big Ten preview, analysis on every position, and much more. Fellas, it's going to be a great issue, I think, heading into this year.
Look at that cover, man. They always do such a great job over there putting that thing together. But Will Johnson, you know what? Special kid, too. He is a special talent. So, guys, we've been fortunate the last 3 years to have really gotten Michigan at its zenith since probably the Fielding Yost days. I was talking to Doug Karsh, the voice of Michigan football, about that. His son has been there for the last 3 years, and he said, look, it has not been better than this probably since 1901 to 04 or whatever it is when John Borton was there covering Fielding Yost. So it's been fantastic, and I can't believe we get to do this for a living. So I'm excited about this team. Wink Martindale loves his defense. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to give away too much of what he told me. You're going to have to order the football preview, but man, lots of pros on that defense.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is a joy to put together every year. Sometimes our magazine weeks can be, full disclosure, a little inside baseball here, a little monotonous, but this one, it's a lot of work, but it's not, because I feel like we go through, it's sort of for us, sort of the unofficial kickoff to summer. There's not a better deep dive on this team that you'll find anywhere else over the next few months. So please, it is an ad read, but at the same time, the work that not just myself, but these guys put into it, our entire staff, it's remarkable, it's thorough, and you're going to know as much, if not more, than anyone else about this team heading into the year. So round in third base on production. We got another week or so to clean some stuff up and get it in. It's going to be in your mailbox hopefully next month or so.
I'll give the pitch I always do. Get 3 copies right now. One for you, one for a friend, one to keep in the archives in case you lose it. You may be at the beach, which is a great place to read it, by the way, somewhere, tropical or in the great state of Michigan this summer as you prepare for the season. You may lose it, whatever. Just get an extra. Pre-order it at the WolverineOnDemand.com or the link in the description. But that's enough for the sales portion of the show. Let's get into some hoops a little bit here. Jamir Watkins is the top player in the NCAA transfer portal, a Florida State transfer who went through the NBA Combine draft process, decided he's coming back to college basketball, and Michigan and Dusty May are in the mix, according to John Rothstein of CBS Sports. He's set to visit Michigan this week, also to visit St. John's this week. A little bit of conflicting reports there. Adam Zagoria of New York Times says that he didn't hear of a St. John's visit just minutes after Rothstein's report on the Michigan and St. John's visit. So not exactly sure what's happened there. Not sure if there's been an update in the meantime, but those 2 schools in the mix. He's also considering a return to Florida State. Oregon, Kansas State, Cincinnati seem to be in the mix, but nothing reported on visits to those 2 schools. But Watkins, 6'10", 210-pounder, spent last year at Florida State, 3 seasons before that at VCU, led Florida State, which was a bad team, but led them with 15.6 points per game, 6 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.9 steals. Shot 50% from 2, 34.4% on 96 3-point attempts. Had the highest usage rate on the team. The one thing we talked about several weeks ago when Michigan got its 6 transfers, and it seemed, we talked to Dusty May, and it seemed like they were pretty content with where they were at. We were saying they may be lacking that one difference maker, and it feels like Watkins could be that guy if Michigan is able to reel him in.
Yeah, I have an update. I spoke with sources at Michigan, St. John's, and Florida State about this in the last 24 hours. One of them tells me that FSU talked with him last night. Jamir's mulling it over, but it was explained as a positive talk for FSU. He did say, this source did say, if he leaves, they feel it's Michigan. He called it 50-50 on the decision. So then another call from another FSU source says there's a distinct possibility he returns to Florida State. And so we'll see what happens. But that was kind of the sense I got that in speaking to the Michigan people, that there's no visit set in stone at this point, and we're getting close to the end of the week. So maybe they were putting out feelers. Maybe this is an NIL play for him. That's just kind of when these things happen, right? When there's conflicting information, hey, I'm going to go see St. John's unless you guys can help me out with NIL or something like that. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened here, but I think that's a possibility because St. John's folks think that if he leaves Florida State, it'll be Michigan as well. So, and I don't know that Michigan could match the money, though, that St. John's, for example, would give him, given their money cannon there for basketball. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here if he doesn't visit this week. But I do think there's a possibility he returns to Florida State. If Michigan gets him on campus, I would view that as an extremely positive development, obviously, in this recruitment. And boy, either way, though, according to the Michigan sources, they are very happy with their roster. They think they can win big with it. So that excites me too, guys. I just the job that Dusty May has done has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing. The way that Dusty May has recruited so far, if they can get him on campus, you think they have a hell of a chance to close because typically they're only bringing guys on campus that they think they have a shot with. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, it's kind of a wait and see thing unless that happens. But, when you look at the player in general, what did Dusty May say when we talked to him a few weeks ago? It was that, roster's probably set unless, something special became available or something that really drew them to a guy might be a fit. And this is one of those cases where all of a sudden, if you were to bring in a guy like this and you put him next to Roddy Gale, you've got these two big kind of do it all sort of 2/3 type of wing players that is where, I would still have questions about maybe who that lead guy winds up being on this team. But man, oh man, that would really round this thing out to where you're not just talking about, hey, this team could could compete in the top 3, 4, 5 of the Big Ten too. They might be one of the favorites to do it, and they could make some noise in the NCAA tournament. So, if they're able to find a way to one, get him on campus and then get him on board, I mean, you could do a whole hell of a lot worse than a guy who averaged, I think, almost 16 points per game last year. He's got a nearly 7-foot wingspan from some of the reading that I've done. It would be a hell of a pull if they're able to do it. And again, to me, just editorializing it, so to speak, it does kind of feel like an NIL play where you probably do see this guy get a bag from Florida State and he winds up going back. But hey, like I said, if they're able to find a way to get him to Ann Arbor, the way that this staff has shown it can close so far, that would be a hell of an addition, a home run addition.
Yeah, I feel like it just depends on kind of what his priorities are. He was close to going to the NBA this past year. He ranked number 72 on the Athletics big board heading into the combine. He decides to, probably be near the end of the draft or maybe undrafted, that sort of thing, and decides to come back. Would your final year, do you want to just make more money knowing that you're probably going to make some a year from now in the professional ranks? Or, not that Michigan can't offer any money themselves either, or do you want to play with a little bit of a better team? When you look at Bart Torvik's rankings right now, Florida State is projected to go 13-18 this year, 128th in the country. It'd be another terrible year, whereas Michigan, coming off a bad year, is ranked number 33. If you plug him into Torvik's rankings, this is really the nerd stuff. If you plug him in, Michigan moves up to number 25 in the country, according to his efficiency rankings. He'd be the highest usage rate player on the team, according to Torvik. Like, he would be immediately an impact player on a pretty good team, or at least what a lot of us expect to be a pretty good team. So it just depends on the priorities. None of us know him. I can't speak to that, but yeah, it's kind of interesting to see, some of these late recruitments. And Dusty May, he talks about making a lot of his decisions well in advance. Well, it seems like holding back one scholarship spot was, potentially, not that they wouldn't have taken somebody else if they wanted him, but potentially intentional for Michigan, because he says this week on the Defend the Block podcast that in our profession, there are times when you can sit and wait and you have a potentially big time player that can kind of fall to you because of the situation. So it's kind of this nice little flexibility. He said we could hold the scholarship over for next year, but either way, and if Dan Hurley leaves for the Los Angeles Lakers, some UConn guys could come available. Like, you never know what could happen, but I think either way, they're in a pretty good spot with having the one spot open and knowing they feel good about what they have and they don't have to use it.
And fit's going to matter too. If they don't deem him a fit on his visit, then he won't get an offer. It's just the way it is. They aren't going to mess with the chemistry they have, and they feel it's really good. And speaking to people close to the program, they feel like they've got guys that really fit together and they really want to play together and they want to win together. So you don't want to bring in a guy that, hey, give me the ball, I want to be the guy. And again, I'm not saying that Watkins is that, but if there's any possibility of that, then you don't take him. So that's what I love about this staff. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go get with one guy, and if I can't get him into school, then we're screwed. He's got several other options. And
has that happened before?
Yeah, maybe a couple times. And then, but they're still looking at the transfer portal every day, guys, from what people are telling me, right? They are looking in there. He does not rest. Dusty May and his staff, his outstanding staff, they do not rest. So I love the staff, love where this is. I love the fact, guys, that we can possibly be looking at covering an NCAA tournament again next year, because I really, really missed that. There's no reason for that.
And I've never been, so I'd love to get to one.
That's crazy. You got to.
I'm undefeated at the tournament for Michigan. I think 8-0.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to get back.
I don't think Kentucky's ever won a tournament game when you've been in attendance.
That's true. We cursed them there. I mean,
you guys have the magic touch when it comes to that stuff.
That's right.
We were at the St. Peter's game. That was unbelievable. St. Patty's Day weekend.
So much fun.
Yeah, incredible. And last thing, just to add something I was planning on mentioning earlier, CJ Moore of The Athletic says that Watkins is one of the most athletic wings in the country. He's a menace defensively with the ability to get deflections and steals. So, he would be a guy on both ends too, that I think, that's important to point out. Defensively, don't necessarily maybe have a bunch of guys that feel like defensive stoppers on this team. I know Vlad Golden's a good rim protector and, some other guys can defend, but I think he would add quite a bit on that side of the floor. But by the time we talk next week, potentially have an update again there. But we will move on. Michigan basketball starts their summer practices next week, so they'll be hitting the floor. You see Vlad Golden, some of these guys, Roddy Gale, they're all already on campus, so we'll keep an eye on that as it progresses. Let's talk Michigan football, and Chris and I were at Doran Mayhew, fantastic accounting firm, the other day in Grand Rapids, and we were just kind of talking in one of the boardrooms over there. What's a tougher game, USC or Washington? And I'm doing this article series over at thewolverine.com ranking the toughest games on Michigan's schedule. And it's really hard when you get down to some of these more challenging ones because Michigan does have such a loaded schedule. Ohio State going down there, I think, is clearly number one, probably with quite a bit of room in between that with all they have returning. And the fact that, Michigan did win there in 2022, but they hadn't done that in Columbus since 2000. It's just really hard to do. Not many teams go down there and win. Not saying, again, it's impossible. It's certainly not. Then you look at, kind of Texas, Oregon, USC, Washington. I guess we'll start here. Who do you guys have as the second toughest game on Michigan's schedule this year?
The second toughest game.
Unless you think one of them's tougher than Ohio State.
No, I don't. I think it's Oregon. I do. I think Oregon is the second most, is maybe the most complete team on the schedule, honestly. I think they have better quarterback play than Ohio State, but it's where you play them, right? You get Oregon at home. You have to play at Ohio State. I think Texas is third. So my question to you is, did you have Fresno State or Michigan State ranked higher?
I had
Fresno
State is a tougher game. I think it is. It's the first game of the year.
Yeah,
because
I've been seeing these Michigan State message boards that they're going to upset Michigan this year. Michigan State in John Smith's first year, and I just got to say I don't see that happening. I don't think they have the line play to do it. I think they'll get better under John Smith, but I don't think this is the year. So I thought that was pretty interesting when I saw that thread of hope. They're selling hope over there, I guess. So regardless, I think Oregon is the second toughest team. I think Texas is third on that list, and then probably the big one, like we were talking, Clay, Washington and USC.
Right.
I think Washington. I think it is hard to win out there. I've said this a million times. I've seen them win out there in a road game once in my life, and that was a miracle. UCLA game in 1989 when they needed an onside kick recovery by the late great Veda Murray and a kick to win it. To me, when you play on the road and that place will be fired up. They've got enough talent, especially offensively. Michigan's defense travels, fellas, and that's the good point here. That's the good part about that. So, but that offense is going to have to put up some points out there, and it's going to be interesting. So, but man, what a tough 5 games that's going to be, and what an exciting 5 games that's going to be. I can't wait, fellas. Hopefully, you've both booked your flights. AB, I know that Clay has out to Washington, so we're going to have some fun out there.
Yeah, it's a road trip I'm looking forward to. For me, it really, when you talk about Michigan has a hard time winning out there, it feels like the Rose Bowl was really the only time they've won out there, like in the last 30 years or so. And so, that's an interesting subplot with all of these teams, really, is how are they going to fare going coast to coast? And, for the West Coast teams coming to the East Coast and all that. I am putting the finishing touches on the Big Ten preview for the aforementioned football preview magazine. And I actually went through and went game by game with every team as I was putting this together. And it's kind of interesting to see the matchups that, this is a better team, but you got to go to UCLA or you have to go to Washington. And I think that Washington game is going to be a little tougher than some might think, especially given that it's kind of a kindred spirit in terms of Jed Fish. We know the type of program that he's going to build. Very much kind of in that Harbaugh mold as well. So, but for me, that second toughest game is Oregon. I think that, spoiler alert, I'm going to pick Oregon to win the Big Ten. I think they're the most complete team in the Big Ten. I think that they are the better coach team between them and Ohio State. Just my opinion, at least in terms of this group that they have coming back. So to me, it's Oregon. USC is going to be tough, but it's getting, there's some weird energy out there with Lincoln Riley right now. We know the Texas game will be difficult, but to me, I think when you look at what this college football playoff top 4 might look like, I think that there's a good chance that Ohio State and Oregon could be in that mix. So by virtue of that Oregon game to me, I think sticks out as very difficult.
Yeah, I think that Oregon's probably a better team are going to be than Texas, but I think Texas is going to be a bigger challenge just because of where it's placed on the schedule with, Texas maybe knowing more what it's going to be than Michigan at that point in the season. But I mean, it's so tough to say. And then you guys went exactly where I wanted to go next, Chris. I would totally agree. The huge debate probably is 4 or 5 between Washington and USC. I agree. It's Washington. When you look at it, I know they're a Big Ten team now, but Michigan hasn't beaten a Pac-12 team on the road since 1989 UCLA game. 0-4 since. They lost at Utah in 15, lost at Oregon in 03. Washington, they lost in 01 and UCLA in 2000. I don't think I'm missing any there. And the one win over UCLA was by 1 point. But beyond just that and the challenge of going there and winning, Washington should be pretty decent at least under Jed Fish in their first year. It's going to be a completely different team than the one that took the field against Michigan on January 8th, just a few months ago. But they have Will Rogers at quarterback. They have 12 transfers coming in from Arizona, some of the top players from Jed Fish's former team coming over there. It's going to be hard for them all to gel together. You don't really know what they're going to be, but I think that's tough. And then USC is going to be good, though, in my opinion. And they got Dan Lynn as their D coordinator now, who's going to put in the same system that the Michigan's running under Wink Martindale. He worked under Wink Martindale with the Ravens in 2021. He turned around UCLA's defense from about 100th in the country to 15th last year, and now is kind of one of those rising stars in the profession. So that's an interesting one. I'm going to read off here the early game lines to some of these Michigan games and get your guys' reaction. Texas is a 3-point favorite at Michigan. USC is an 11-point underdog at Michigan. Washington's a 9-point underdog at home against Michigan. Oregon favored by 2.5 at the Big House. And then Ohio State a 10-point favorite in Columbus. Any of those stand out at all?
Yeah, three of them: USC, Washington, and Ohio State. I think USC probably maybe a touchdown to 9. I think Washington maybe 5 to 7 dogs, and then Ohio State as a 10-point favorite. I like Michigan. I think Michigan should maybe be a 6 to 7 point underdog there. So, and that's as of now. These change obviously,
yes.
And they will change.
Yes.
They will continue to change once we actually get to see what these teams are, which you don't until the first couple games of the year. I remember, and I say this all the time, John Cooper at Ohio State saying he didn't think teams should be ranked until the 6th game of the schedule, and he's probably right. That's when you really know what these teams are. And if somebody's starting at 25 and the only reason they're at 5 instead of 1 when they've run the table is because of where they started, that's not right. So regardless, with the schedule and with the playoff now, if you perform well enough, you're going to get to the playoff and you're going to continue to ascend in the rankings. Michigan's going to probably start about 12, 13, do you think, fellas, when the AP poll comes out? Maybe a little higher than that. But
I think higher.
You think so?
Yeah.
I
could see them being like 7, 8 feels
8,
right.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess there aren't that many great teams with great quarterbacks ahead of them. But regardless, I think to me this is a it's a crapshoot, and it really kind of depends on Michigan's quarterback as to what they're going to do. So I think I would put them with their defense. I'd put them in the top 10 for sure. So, but we have no idea what this offense is going to be. But regardless, that's where I am.
Yeah, in terms of when we see these games where Michigan is a 7.5 point favorite, 8-point favorite, I don't know that I'm quite confident enough in the offense yet, especially in those bigger games where you're like, okay, well, they're going to cover an 8-point spread or a 9-point spread as a favorite. That said, the flip side of that, when you look at them being at 8.5-point favorite or underdog to Ohio State, that I think that's going to be a bar fight and a game that they could probably cover. I think that you're going to see a lot of, if Michigan's going to win most of the games on this schedule, especially those 5 showdown games or whatever it is, they're going to have to drag these teams into the mud a little bit more than maybe we're used to seeing. And now the defense is going to do their part and win them a lot of games on its own. But the offense, to me, obviously, huge question mark. We'll see about the spreads in some of these games, but I think all of them. I just, you see an 11-point favorite. Who is it? To USC?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that USC, I don't know if they play any defense, but I think their offense will still probably be pretty good. So we'll see what happens. It's tough to plant a flag on that. Still kind of doing a lot of reading on what these teams will look like and how they match up. But, any of those games where Michigan is like a double-digit favorite, I'm not quite ready to cash or run the bet ticket to the window or anything like that.
Yeah. Wink actually talked about Lynn today with me at USC and, what a good coach he is and how proud he is of these guys that have been under his tree. And there are a lot of them, fellas. Look at 2 of them and Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter now and what they've accomplished under his tutelage and what he kind of built with his defense. So I think they'll be better, and that'll make them much more dangerous than I think an 11-point dog in Ann Arbor.
Yeah. The interesting thing is no matter who Lincoln Riley gets as his D coordinator, they never have a good defense. Alex Grinch was seen as this great hire when he got him from Ohio State. And then, it just didn't work out, whether that's practice time, how much they practice defense, or if they're physical enough. Michigan's defense, they talk a lot about how the offense and the style they play helps them out and vice versa. Ron Bellamy was talking this week about how the defense and all the variation, all the different coverages they run helps the receivers out. So I don't know what they're doing over there or what he was doing at Oklahoma, but it just doesn't seem like they found that formula yet. But we shall see with Dan Lynn now as the D coordinator there. Last one I'll bother you guys with is what's a team that could give Michigan a scare this year, like a Maryland last season, like Illinois and Maryland the year before? There could be that game, even when Michigan's blowing the majority of its opponents out, and this year is going to be a little bit different with such a tough schedule, but there seems to be at least one of those games that sneaks up on them.
I think Minnesota is going to be a pretty decent this year, as a matter of fact. So that one, you never know what they're going to look like in an opener, too. Fresno State, has some pieces. But to me, it would be Minnesota. I think the best of the rest on that list. I don't think Illinois got anything. Indiana's going to be a few years away. They're recruiting better. Remarkably, Indiana's done some pretty good things there in the portal. So, but to me, PJ Fleck, Michigan's handled them. But I look at those other games and they damn well better not lose one of those. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you lose any of those other ones other than the 5 that we have routinely talked about, then you're talking like 8-4, potentially 7-5. And I just don't think that's a place anyone wants to be or have a discussion like that. So Fresno State, I think it's going to be a little more difficult than, I know they're 22.5-point favorites. I think that's going to be a bit of a dogfight, a night game that you wait all day to play, and there's a lot of unknowns there. So wouldn't be surprised if that was one that they struggled with a little bit. You look at kind of these sleepy spots on the schedule. I don't think Illinois is going to be very good, but going to Illinois, coming off of a road trip to Washington, and then ahead of a rivalry game the next week against Michigan State, I think that's off a bye week too, if I'm not mistaken. It is off a bye week because their bye week is October 12th. I don't know, something about that Illinois game. Just talk about a team that might be apt to get you in a dogfight. We know the way that Brett Bielema coaches, the way his teams play. They're unafraid and they're usually pretty physical. And I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't think they're in any danger of losing that game. But you look at these games where it might be too close for comfort. For some reason, that one's sticking out to me.
No, that's fair. And I also have Minnesota. I agree with you, Chris. I think that they have a ton returning, 9 defensive starters. They have a new quarterback, which you can't get any worse. No offense to Ethan Kaliakmanis, who's now going to be Rutgers starter, by the way, now that Gavin Wimsatt is gone. But, I mean, they bring in Max Brosmer, who's from New Hampshire, FCS level. He's got an adjustment to make. I'm just going to slap it on there right now. Guarantee he's going to be better than Kaliakmanis. He couldn't do anything last year, which was kind of nice. When you're in Michigan, you get up early. I know that was somewhat of a game at halftime, but you get up early in that game with Will Johnson getting a pick 6 and that stuff, and you're like, there's just no way like that this team's going to be able to score enough to beat you.
What's the early spread on that one, Clay?
I don't know that it's out. I don't know that I've seen one. But yeah, I think that's a team because it's sandwiched in between USC and Washington.
Yep.
That could maybe make it a game. Minnesota hosts USC the next weekend, but they're not looking ahead. When you're Minnesota and you're playing at Michigan, you're not going to look ahead. Michigan maybe not looking ahead, but you know that something's coming, right? You had USC. It's going to be an emotional game. Then you go back the next week and have to go all the way to the West Coast. So could be there, but the thing of it is with these games is they sneak up on you. So maybe predicting them right now on June 6th isn't the easiest exercise, but we did it anyway because it's June 6th, and we're excited about Michigan football 86 days away. That's going to be our show for today. Again, the link is in the description to the video and the podcast to order your 160-page Michigan football preview magazine, or go to the WolverineOnDemand.com, pre-order it before June 17th. Add a discount right now. Like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel and head to thewolverine.com to get on our message board, read all of our premium articles, use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. But appreciate everybody joining us, and we'll see you next time.